This is Community Forum, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. Today, our guests are Caleb Probst, Mary Bonnett, and Adam Marcantoni. They are discussing the second theatrical production about sex trafficking in Chicago, Shadowtown 2, The JUANs. This play follows last year's presentation of Shadowtown. Now, the focus is on the men who buy young girls for sex. Thanks for being here. We're going to start off by talking to each of you individually and what your role is in this play and how you came to this, to be part of it. Let's start with you, Caleb.
Sure. Well, I came to be part of it because Mary knew of the work that I do with an organization called the Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, in which I go out and talk to young men in high school about these issues and exploring masculinity and why, how that perpetuates this, what we call demand for commercial sexual exploitation. So she knew that not only was I an actor, but I also had some background in the topic, and so she said, "You want to be in the play?" And I said, "Sure." And I play a character called Jacob, who is really sort of the stand-in for most men. Most men are not going out and looking to specifically buy girls in prostitution, but sort of stand by on the sidelines and think it's okay and that I'm not really doing anything if I am allowing my friends to engage in this sort of behavior. So we're really hoping that we can show that it has costs to everybody, including men who aren't engaging specifically, but who are also not intervening when they should be.
Right. It's knowing that something is wrong and, like you said, not stepping in.
And being able to, and the play explores, why is it so hard to stop that? Even, in a room with 20 men, 19 of them probably are not okay with it, but go along with it because they think they're the only one who isn't okay with it. And so exploring those pressures that sort of the cultural masculinity puts on us I think is really helpful and something that we don't often look at, but through the play, we're really hoping to kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely get more into that as we move along. Well, Mary, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back here.
Great to be here.
No, thanks. And last year's discussion with you was like so moving to me and also depressing because honestly, no apologies. It's just, I think, an issue that, as we were talking before the show, an issue that doesn't get a lot of coverage and certainly deserves it. Tell me about, well, you were here last year. Tell us about how it went last year and how you came to this new production.
It was incredibly successful. We did the show Shadowtown, which was based on trafficking of young girls in Chicagoland. And I'd gone out and interviewed dozens of people involved with sex trafficking. And that went anywhere from Vice Squad to the pimps to the girls trafficked. And healthcare workers, social workers, etc., that were involved in trying to make a difference or causing the problem. And out of that, I concentrated it down to 4 girls, told their story. One was from Humboldt Park, one was from the west side of Chicago, one was Ling Ling from China, who had been imported into America, and the last one was Samantha, a little girl from Naperville. And how they got to be trafficked, what was their journey as a young child, and how they got to those crossroads of where the pimp had access to or the trafficker had access to all those girls. And it was told from the pimp's point of view. It had a lot of humor, believe it or not.
Right.
He was very funny. A lot of people were funny. And there was a lot of beautiful music and dancing and singing. It was Brechtian style, as it's called, pull you in, push, take you out, pull you in. And we had over 3,000 people who attended. It had a massive ripple effect. We raised funds for partners. And our partner last year was Deborah's Place, and the Dream Catcher Foundation, where they go out and rescue trafficked girls. And then Ann's House, part of the Salvation Army, where they have a long-term residential care for little girls between 12 and 17, very young girls. And these are all trafficked girls that we're dealing with. So we were able to raise over $20,000 for the organization. Very successful, but more exciting was the ripple effect.
Right,
and how these
definitely.
people gave and gave and gave afterwards. In fact, just a bit ago, a company came out with a book, a business book, and part of those proceeds will benefit the Dreamcatchers. A woman stepped forward and is offering a home, because Dreamcatchers is looking to have a long-term residential care home for these girls who are dropping crisis center. So this woman is providing a home. She's in investment real estate. And, but she came to see the show. They understood the issue, and the issue is so profound. And so it moved people. So her story, Theater's journey, is to raise awareness, get people to go proactive, and of course donate wherever they can, either with themselves or with financially, to support this cause and try to end it. So we came, and then we had all these celebrities involved. We had 24 different Chicago celebrities. They were terrific. Robin Robinson, Marion Brooks, Virginia Kendall, who's a celebrity in my book. She's a federal judge. She's a rock star.
How did they become involved in it?
We asked them, but they were they understood the problem. They were aware of the issue, I think, being in the news and whatnot. Some were not, and we educated them. But they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to be part of the solution, as opposed to, and knew that their celebrity would bring attention to the cause, bring on focus to it. And they did a wonderful job. They acted in the show. They were the 12th character. They were Samantha's character. And it worked out very, very well. We had Karen Lewis, who will return again with the show we're doing now.
But it's going to be nonpartisan?
She is the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. I don't know anything else. And so this year, what we did was flip into Shadowtown 2, the JUANs, because we finished up 1, which was really the supply side, these little girls, and how they get to be where they are, and who's buying them, or who is using them to make money. So this one, at the end of that story was, well, we covered the JUANs, but only in a small way. And I looked at it and I said, well, 97% of the users are men. That really didn't get covered. There was also a very big campaign going called In Demand with Case.
Still going.
Still going, but at that time, very prominent. And it was just very clear that that issue had not been brought to light. Plus, I was very fascinated at how, how people who was involved with it on the demand side, and who and how they were impacted, how their families were impacted. So with Shadowtown 2, the JUANs, I went and interviewed over 50 prostitutes, and then lots and lots of JUANs.
Wow. And
they ran the gamut from very poor to very rich. One was under house arrest at the time. And from the prostitutes, I interviewed them from their perspective of the JUANs, what they thought of them, what the JUANs asked them to do. And that was fascinating.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely get into that as well. But let's
next
present our
fabulous
last guest.
actor.
Yes, Adam Marcantoni, welcome, and
thank you.
Thanks for being here. Tell us about your role in this whole production.
Yeah, so when I was asked actually by Caleb to audition for Mary, and I think the first thing that struck me about this was that this was art and theater being used for what I think it should be used for, awareness and starting a conversation, and not just for entertainment value. And being fresh out of college, some of my values are that the productions that I do, I want them to say something. I want them to start these conversations. And so I was very excited and moved to be asked to be a part of this production and what it stands for. And I was very nervous to go into this because I knew I was going to learn a lot about myself. And the character I play is actually, I'm very similar to this character. And that was scary to learn, because he's a young 21-year-old kid who does buy young prostitutes. And even though I'm not a person who does something like that, the similarities in just what it means to be a young man in our society and finding our identities and struggling against what it means to be a man and what society tells you it means to be a man. And so I'm learning about myself through this too, because I think like CJ, I don't know. I have a lot to learn.
CJ is the name of the character you play.
Yes, it is.
And how do you, I'm curious as what similarities do you see and you just graduated from college, and college, I tend to think of it when I reflect on my own college years, it's a very testosterone laden and heavy.
Yeah.
What did you see? How did you identify with that character?
I guess some of the similarities are just being able to be okay to express yourself and express your feelings, because there are times when, you know, like as men we have feelings and we feel these things, but you go into college and, you know, everyone's looking at you. It feels like everyone's looking at you from all angles. And I always felt, even though I went to a great theater school, Chicago College of Performing Arts, even in theater school, I felt there were times where I would be judged as a man if I felt or if I expressed my feelings.
Judged negatively, right? Like as a weak or
yeah, exactly, as weak or seen as a woman, which is a terrible thing that we do in our society. And so that's one reason. And also too, like you said, you're in college, your testosterone is going. It's going like nobody's business, and being able to confront when it's good testosterone, and that's and also when it's bad and you're affecting other people in the wrong way, because even though men my age don't, not a lot of them do buy young prostitutes, but a lot of them affect other women negatively because they don't know how to speak to girls and how to have a healthy relationship, and not seeing them as objects anymore. And you know, in college, you it's all thrown in your face, and you almost don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think kind of what on that thought process of the way that men objectify women, I think it's really this sort of continuum, and you know, at the far extreme of turning someone into an object is turning them into a commodity that I'm going to purchase. But there's many steps that we all find ourselves, you know, degrees on that continuum. Maybe it's, you know, maybe it's porn, maybe it's not porn, maybe it's just the swimsuit issue, or maybe it's, you know, standing in the corner at a party being like, man, she is a 7.5, but that one is a, you know, like that sort of mentality.
Right.
And I think we all, as men, know, you know, have been there and know folks who are there, and go, and then when you can take a step back and say, actually, that's kind of uncomfortable, and if you can see it from the other perspective of, well, how would you feel to be the one, you know, being judged based solely on the sum of your parts, you know, as individual parts, like she's got great legs, but that one has, you know, instead of, well, she's an interesting person who, by the way, is a biochemist and hopes to cure cancer or something, but we don't care about that, you know? Right,
that's true. And your character, does it bring some of these questions out? Does it bring some?
Sort of. My character comes into this through a bachelor party, and being that guy who has no intention of ever actually engaging in this, but suddenly finds himself in a very testosterone-charged, macho world, and these are my friends, and what do I do? And I actually had a very similar experience. I was at a bachelor party a few years ago, 10 guys, and one guy was like, hey, we're gonna all pool our money and get a stripper. And he had gone around individually, and all 8 other guys were like, yeah, okay, if everybody else is cool, I'll pitch in. And he came to me last. He says, everybody else is already going to do it. And I thought, oh my goodness. I said, I'm really uncomfortable with that. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, I work for this organization. I teach young men about objectifying women, and I'm uncomfortable. I said, if you guys are going to do it, that's fine, but I'm going to leave. He said, oh, well, I want it to be either all or nothing, and so we didn't. And then afterwards, all other 8 came up to me and said, I heard that you were the one that stopped it, and I just want to thank you because I was really uncomfortable with it. And I thought, this is,
Wow.
I mean, that's the thing, right? There's 90% of them are not okay with it, but 80% of them aren't standing up and saying, I'm actually uncomfortable, even though they are. And it's because of that pressure to conform to, you know, this masculine norm that we've established in our society.
Yeah, it's that fear, of looking weak, of not looking macho, of
Exactly.
not fulfilling their role of what a man should be. During your research, Mary, what did you find about these ideas of masculinity and how that came into your writing and work here?
This was a really interesting journey. It was actually harder to do or pinpoint. You know, how do you concentrate this down and really show a piece of theater that reflects what's going on? And there were so many types of men out there using these girls. And
By types of men, what do you mean?
oh, from all walks of life, all economies, all ethnic groups, all culture, you know, just across the board. It didn't matter. It's an international issue as well. And so in America, and this was Chicago, and it was across the boards with being, you know, the south side to the northern shore suburbs were the interviews, trust fund babies to, you know, guys out of prison. So it was that broad of range.
Wow.
But then I looked at more, pulled back and looked at the greater research on it and what's driving it. And it was the money. You know, if it's a $32 billion business, it beat out weapons, you know, it comes in second.
In our country, it beats out.
Yeah, worldwide.
Well, internationally.
Worldwide.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that's a massive, massive
32
amount of
billion
money. And if 97% of the users are men, so, well, where's the crux of that? And who are the decision makers and who are the power brokers that can change it? It was people with money. So what I did was concentrate it down and put it in the North Shore of Chicago, because I interviewed many people from there. I'd interviewed cops out there, and I said, who are the users? They all identified a specific type of male. And then who are the girls being used? They identified a specific type of female out there in the majority. And the imbalance was remarkable financially, you know, where those girls had come from and where these men were coming from, and many businessmen from the O'Hare area coming in. And so that's what this family is about. They're Chase Johnson, the second, he's the third, and CJ. And his wife, his lovely wife, who's very bright and accomplished, and their lovely daughter, who's in her residency in emergency, and her fiance here, who's the outsider. He's the poet. He's the professorial poet.
Certainly looks like one.
Yes, yes,
Well,
he
that's
does.
why I had
he
to grow a
does.
beard for this so I could look like a...
And the young son here, who's impacted, and then there is baby girl, who is the trafficked girl, and she has an imaginary friend called Betty Sappho. Because baby girl is in a mental breakdown. At this point, you're not quite sure she is, but indeed she is. So it shows these men, the older man who's a patriarch of the family, very, very wealthy, the impact it has on them, the choices they make when they get involved with it, based on young men being exposed at a very early age to pornography, to people just casually going to a party and rites of passage. What happens there? We were just explaining that there was one of the interviews talking about a bar mitzvah, you know, and not to single that out, but that was a rite of passage. So a girl was offered up, you know, 16-year-old birthday, a 21-year-old birthday, graduation.
All those rites of passage.
Celebrated with offering up buying a young girl or a woman.
And I got involved with the Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation as a research assistant on a very similar sort of let's interview men across Chicago. And that was one thing we really found was this, it came up again and again, this idea of the rite of passage. And it was, what sort of was disturbing to me was these men would talk about it like my dad or my uncle bought this for me in just as casually as I would say, yeah, when I turned 21, my dad took me out and bought me a beer and said like, welcome to manhood, you know, but it was the same, girl versus beer, and
Product.
there you go. Yeah, it's a product.
Product.
Yeah, it's this, making a product of a person.
So it's this objectification of women, and I would say with sex trafficking, it's the bottom of the barrel of how women are treated, you know, in this society, or how they're looked upon. We have one perhaps running for president, and they talk about her pantsuits and her hair, you know.
That's true. That's true.
And she's a brilliant woman.
Not being partisan.
Yeah, not being partisan. But that was, so the overall view was to get a clear picture of who was out there, but more so how we raise our boys, how we treat our girls, how it impacts a family, all the secrets and lies that go behind it. A lot of the interviews was based on so many lies. That was remarkable. So this deals between fantasy, lies, trust, all of that.
Tell me about some of those lies, and then I do want to hear about what law enforcement and society in general are doing to educate and also remedy this problem.
Well, it is profound, and I think it's new as far as raising awareness to it, but there's many active groups out there doing things. A lot of the men that I interviewed simply compartmentalized it. It was a sport. It was a hobby.
Sport.
Oh, absolutely. It was a hobby. It was an entitlement. It was a tradition amongst their buddies or in their family. It was part of their culture. It was, or it was personal in the fact that they didn't feel they could have relationships, so they bought young girls, or they did not have a very high self-esteem, or they had been rejected so many times that they bought girls to appease that.
Which is where kind of CJ lies in the middle of that. Is his lie is that he was never able to have a relationship with a girl, and so his lie is that this young prostitute is his girlfriend. He's convinced that this is his girlfriend.
Not a girlfriend. They buy for, there's sadists that do it, you know, there's just absolute haters out there, that was clear. There's addicts, there's a lot of addicts, sex addicts that they start with porn, and we do broach on that issue. It's huge now because of the internet and how men get addicted to it, but none of it's being addressed on their personal needs and issues.
Right.
And that's another thing. At the end of those interviews, I had a great sympathy for those men that I interviewed. There was a blindness there, very much so. But there's also just a sad loneliness there. You know, either needs not being met, or yes, there was the sexual drive, that was a given, but it went way beyond that.
Far deeper than they even
Then they were
realized.
aware of power, control, certainly a raising of being entitled because we're men, and being raised that women were so subordinate to them and were there for a purpose, for their purpose.
Right, right.
So that was a fascinating journey to see that.
And that's you know that's a lot of where this curriculum that Case developed that I implement is aimed at getting at those attitudes and beliefs before men begin purchasing. The research that we did in 2008 indicates that most men are going to do this. If they're going to do it, they'll do it for the first time in their college years, that sort of 19 to 23. So we said, let's take a step back and see if we can curb this before it gets there. And to segue into sort of the law enforcement question that you asked, our Case's most recent legal victory was the passage of a law through the End Demand Illinois campaign that establishes a fund that will award grants to social service providers to provide comprehensive services for victims of trafficking. And where the money comes from in this essentially empty piggy bank at the moment is from the fines levied against Johns and against pimps, and those fines were established from previous laws that End Demand advocated for. So that money goes into this fund, which then provides services. But if the piggy bank is going to get filled up, we have to have law enforcement going after the Johns and the pimps.
Is that happening?
Well, here we're hoping the work of our policy director, Lynn Johnson. She is a brilliant mind, and she said we have to encourage this to happen. And so the other part of the law is that a portion of those fines then go back into law enforcement in order to support that specific goal. So it essentially incentivizes them to not go for the easy arrest, which is the girl on the street
Right.
who isn't even, that's not the majority of prostitution anymore. The majority of it's online. So let's get creative. Let's go find the JUANs where they're at, the men purchasing. And so if we can do that, and the law was just signed by Governor Quinn, I believe, end of August. So it's still a little early to see how successful it's going to be, but we've got a tremendous advocate and partner in the sheriff's office. Tom Dart is like one of the nation's leading law enforcement officials on this issue. He organizes what he calls the National Day of JUANs. He coordinates with other sheriff departments to do this, and then says, hey, look at who all we've arrested and stop doing it. And if you look in Chicago, we have a much lower, and he's been doing this for years, we have a much lower percentage of men in our population doing this than in cities where it's not happening. So I think it's not an inevitability. Men, if they ever have consequences, will stop doing this.
Right, definitely.
So I think we are seeing success, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with this new law.
And if they do enforce the arrest and they do the follow through, then that's what certainly makes the difference.
Oh, yeah.
In it. And also our Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez has been extremely active in this and done a brilliant job on that as well.
That's great, actually, and it's awesome to know that in some sense you're contributing to changing this through
right.
your work and all the work that you're doing and the impact you had. And I wish you well. We're out of time. This time really flew by, but it's a great topic, and hopefully you'll have the same continuing effect with this production.
Great.
Thank you so much.
We also have many experts who will speak afterwards, so if people are interested in that, Anita Alvarez being one of them as well.
Great.
So thank you so much, Juan Carlos.
Well, thanks to all of you again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Community Forum is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Community Forum for local issues and concerns every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.